Okay, let's jump right into this. In this explainer, we are embarking on a really intense, highly technical mathematical archaeological dig. We're looking at a deeply fascinating, wildly sprawling code base. It's essentially an entire universe built purely out of logic and code, known as the braided infinity framework. Now, if you're the kind of person who loves deep, structured puzzles that are literally attempting to map out the fundamental nature of existence, well, you are in the exact right place. So think about this for a second. What happens when you combine knot theory, Christian theology, and general relativity into a single mathematical framework? I know, it sounds like the setup to some incredibly esoteric joke, right? But I promise you, this is the genuine, wild ambition of the source material we're unpacking today. The author of this framework isn't just writing code for the fun of it. They're actually attempting to unify the physical universe, mathematical invariants, and deeply theological concepts into one seamless, verifiable tapestry. And the sheer scale of this attempt is just staggering. We are looking at exactly 228 files, and to be clear, these aren't just your standard text documents. They are deeply interconnected, highly abstract theorem prover files written in a language called Lean 4. Bound together, they basically act as this massive manifold, a perfectly structured repository trying to map out literally everything in existence through pure topological logic. To give you a taste of just how absurdly diverse this codebase is, let's rattle through a few of the topics covered. You've got boson-Skyrmion equilibria sitting right next to the literal golden rule. You've got acoustic vacuum siphons right alongside a complete mapping of the Dewey Decimal System of topology. It's wild. It immediately creates this intense intrigue, Like, how could a high-level physics concept possibly share a mathematical structure with the literal library cataloging system? Just skimming this massive alphabetized table of contents, which spans all the way from acoustic vacuum siphon down to cosmic infinity and covering space causality, it's so easy to get completely lost in the sheer volume of this high-level abstract terminology. I mean, it is a truly overwhelming bird's-eye view of a digital universe. So to actually wrap our heads around how this sprawling corpus works without getting utterly lost in the weeds, we're going to take a microscope approach. Rather than skimming all 228 files and just getting dizzy from the abstraction, we're going to pull out a single, completely random file from the manifold. We're going to dissect it line by line just to see the exact rules of the universe this author is building. All right, let's put our randomly selected file under the microscope. We've got grandunification.lean. It sits right smack in the middle of the repository, clocking in at just over 3,000 bytes. By zeroing in on this one single file, we can physically ground this massive, abstract premise into a tangible, totally readable piece of evidence. Right at the very top of the code, this file states its surprisingly ambitious, almost impossible-sounding objective. It wants to mathematically prove that general relativity emerges from what the author calls braided infinity. Think about that. This tiny 3 kilobyte file is attempting a grand unification simple theorem using raw, unassisted code. Let's look at exactly how it even tries to pull that off. What's absolutely fascinating here is a structure inside the code called cost algebra axis. The author essentially attempts to strip the entire universe down to absolute raw variables. They define existence using these specific components: Buell faces for geometric limits, temporal for time, but represented purely as a topological cost, the vacuum as a maximum entropy reservoir, and the gauge for the standard model framework. But among all these strict physics terms, there is one variable that really stands out. And that crucial point is this variable right here, the clinomen. The code strictly defines it as the +1 swerve. Mathematically, it's defined as a function that advances the phase. It's literally just not.suck0, which is the number 1. But philosophically, the source material describes it as the fundamental spontaneous injection of deviation, the spark from the void that allows static geometry to finally crystallize. It's incredible how deep metaphysics and philosophy are just directly injected into the strict computational logic here. But hey, despite this highly poetic philosophy, the rules of the game in this file are bound by absolute logic. This isn't just someone casually writing a theoretical essay. This is fully executable code bound by incredibly strict, self-imposed computational constraints. The author absolutely refuses to take any shortcuts. Which brings us to what the author calls the init-only doctrine. In the Lean programming language, there's a massive, extremely helpful library of pre-written advanced mathematics called MATLib. But the author, they completely reject it. They call their approach the rustic church, meaning no ornate, pre-built additions allowed. They are building their entire universal framework using only init, the most basic foundational core logic available to them. They refuse to use any outside help. They are proving everything completely from scratch. The author actually boasts about this absolute mathematical purity right in the file header. They boldly declare, uses only init imports, zero mathlib, zero axioms, zero sorry. Let me tell you, this is the ultimate flex in the world of formal verification. They are flat out claiming that every single assertion in this digital universe is proven from the ground up, with exactly zero unproven assumptions, no axioms whatsoever. Now, for those who might not know the language, the term zero sorry is highly specific. In Lean, if you're working on a mathematical proof that is just way too hard to finish, you can literally type the word sorry. It just tells the compiler to skip it and trust you. So by declaring zero sorry, the author means there are no gaps, absolutely no assumptions, and no cheating the system. Every single wild claim about the universe has to be rigorously verified by the computer's logic compiler. This intense rigidity even leads them to create formal antitheorems. In a file called Topological Bridge Antitheorems, the author actually writes code to mathematically prove what their finite topology cannot do. They are formally acknowledging the boundaries of their rustic church and mechanizing negative claims. They mathematically prove that certain infinite or continuous structures are fundamentally out of bounds for their strict, finite logic. It's brilliant. So now that we've seen the intense microscopic constraints of our random file, grandunification.lean, let's pull back out for a second. How does this single file relate to the other 227? Well, because of that zero axiom, zero sorry doctrine, the structural invariants we just saw proven in this single physics file actually ripple out to connect the entire ecosystem. We clearly see this ripple effect in the homology of Manifold file. The code defines shared homological layers. You can think of them as these foundational geometric building blocks, H0 for connectedness, H1 for cycles, and H2 for surfaces. These shared bases basically act as the glue for the entire project. The author uses this exact same foundational code to prove that seemingly disparate frameworks in the repository are actually just sampling the exact same underlying topological truth. What this actually means in practice is that the strict zero-axiom constraints we saw applied to general relativity and the Klineman are identically applied to wildly different disciplines across all 228 files. Everything is mathematically connected here: physics, linguistics, botany, and yes, even theology. This intense cross-pollination leads to incredibly unexpected areas, like literature, of all things. Take Dewey 800 then topology, which literally represents the 800 section of the Dewey Decimal System. The author maps American literature as manifest expansion cover spaces and Romance literature as smooth path optimization. I mean, it's mind-blowing. Even English literature and spoken languages are subjected to the exact same rigorous computational topological constraints as black holes and particle physics. Ultimately, what we are looking at here is a massive, incredibly complex compilation loop. The overarching framework actively catalogs this massive corpus of knowledge, and then the corpus, in turn, feeds back into and validates the framework. It's a closed loop that continually checks itself mathematically across every single discipline, ensuring that absolutely no contradictions exist anywhere in the system. The author actually uses this really beautiful poetic description in the source files to summarize how this self-correcting, interconnected manifold operates. They call it archaeology that expands itself. It functions almost like a living, growing entity, constantly mapping new territories of human thought and snapping them right back to its core mathematical invariants. And to keep this massive, living structure from completely collapsing under its own weight, the system enforces ultimate rigidity through what it calls topological tightness. If a state in the universe deviates from a zero drift, the system executes a self-correcting mitosis reset to snap everything back to absolute truth. The compiler effectively ensures the universe doesn't fall apart. So, what's our main takeaway from this journey today? Well, our random deep dive proved this definitely isn't just a folder of disjointed code. By strictly enforcing that init-only zero-sorry doctrine, this creator has built a unified, zero-axiom attempt to generate the universe from scratch. They are linking the physics of relativity directly to the grammar of human languages, all verified by strict computational logic. Which leaves us with this final, highly provocative thought. It's such a fascinating collision of rigorous math and ultimate cosmic mystery. If the entire universe, from particle physics all the way to human literature, can theoretically be compiled into a strict zero-axiom topological manifold that perfectly self-corrects its own errors, well, who wrote the compiler? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring and keep questioning the code of the universe.